And welcome back to the Daily Dribble podcast, guys. As always, I'm your host, Nick Zammit. Here, thrilled to be back as we continue our march to the start of the 2024-2025 NBA season. It's rapidly approaching. It really, really is. It felt like it was never going to come around about 6 to 8 weeks ago. But here we are. We're less than 2 months away from the regular season tipping off. And I am absolutely delighted, to say the least. I'm loving discussing everything off-season related, but there's nothing better than talking on-court action. So very much looking forward to that coming around. Before we do so, though, there's still quite a bit to get through this off-season. And today I'm going to take you through a little segment called You Win Some, You Lose Some. Now, essentially what that is, it's going to be teams that both this off-season have both won and lost. Very rarely do you have just an off-season where you're purely a winner, and even probably less rarely is it where you're just purely a loser. So I'm going to rattle through some of those teams momentarily. Before we do so, though, I've got some odds and ends. And even prior to that, just want to shout out both Stadium Scene and The Cover. Both those two networks continuing to showcase all of my work here across the off-season, as well as a whole host of other content creators in and around Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Canada. So to both those networks, very, very appreciative of all your continued hard work and support. Likewise to all you guys out there who have tuned in and week out, who've hit up all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. Been nothing short of phenomenal this week. Had a lot of fascinating conversations with you guys just regarding my untouchable players over the last couple of weeks. Be sure to check those episodes out if you haven't already, whether that's watching on YouTube or listening via Apple Podcasts or Spotify. But yeah, really appreciated all those chats I've got to have with you guys over those last couple of weeks. Okay, without further ado, I've done enough blither blathering. Let's get into some very quick odds and ends, starting first and foremost with a couple of big contract extensions that have gone down over the last week or so. Now, I'll start out west in LA firstly with the news that the Clippers have re-signed center Ivica Zubac to a 3-year, $58.6 million contract extension. That was the max that Zubac could get, and is now guaranteed 4 years at $70 million. At 27 years of age, he averaged nearly 12 points and 9 rebounds last season. I think, though, with a couple of big off-season departures, they'll be hoping that they can turn him into a 15 and 10 type of guy. And I think if they do, that'll be massive. He will certainly warrant that money. 4 years, 70 million, absolutely. 17.5 million a year, roughly, that equates to. No problems. I think, though, the Clippers are such a funny team, and I'm looking forward to in a couple of weeks' time doing my standings predictions. They're always contentious little episodes. But the Clippers, for me, are a team that could there's a world in which you could say they're really quite damaging. Losing PG frees up Harden. Kawhi's hopefully healthy and flourishing. One of the top couple of players within the league. I don't know. Derrick Jones Jr. coming in. If Zubac makes that step, there is a pathway there for them to be a really heavy hitter within the West. On the opposite side of things, I see a world in which they could also fall apart and really even be struggling to make the play-in. So fascinated for them this season. I think a big part of it, as I said, is going to come down to what Zubac can produce. But nevertheless, whatever he does, if they give 12 and 9, 13 and 9 or so this season, he certainly warrants that $17.5 million that he'll be getting over the course of the next couple of seasons. In other extension news, out east, Pacers guard TJ McConnell has agreed to a 4-year, $45 million contract extension, therefore taking his deal to 5 years at $54 million. I personally think, and I've heard from a couple of people out there who tune into the show that they're somewhat on board with what I've got to say here, that he's one of the more underrated players within the league. You're getting nearly 10 points, 3 rebounds, 5.5 assists, and a steal per game off the bench. That's tremendous. 5 years at $54 million, a tick under 11 a year. Perfect. Church change. No problems whatsoever paying that. I think any team in the league would be stoked to have that kind of bench output. But really, really good bit of business there for the Pacers to lock up TJ. Finally, on the extension news, and absolutely the biggest one of all of them, Steph Curry from the Warriors has agreed on a 1-year, $62.6 million extension that will keep him on contract through the 2026-2027 season. Curry's guaranteed $178 million over the next 3 years of his Warriors deal, a tick on average under $60 million a year. But as I said, $62.6 million for that final year. He deserves every cent. At 36 years of age, he still averaged 26.5 points, 4.5 rebounds, 5 assists, and shot 41% from three last season. Elite level production there. And I think for the Warriors to be a contender, he's going to have to be even better, which is no easy feat. As I said, for a guy who's late 30s now, he really is the star of the franchise. There is no if, buts, or maybes about it. If anyone can carry this franchise back into relevancy, it is Steph Curry. And as I said, I would pay him every cent and then some. So certainly deserves this. He's going to have his work cut out for him this season. But as I said, the Warriors, if they are to go anywhere this season, Curry is going to be the guy. I'm expecting big output from him this season. In other news, during the week, Rajon Rondo pleaded guilty to a charge of unlawful possession of a firearm in Indiana. He's not going to serve jail time off the back of this, though, but he will be placed on probation for 180 days. He was arrested in January after being pulled over for a traffic violation in which the actual police officer found marijuana, drug paraphernalia, and a 9mm handgun. Now, the drug charges were dropped as part of his plea agreement, so that really helped him out. But primetime Rondo will certainly be hoping to keep the spotlight away from him in the interim little period, you would imagine. Rondo up to no good. There you go. And finally, from odds and ends, Evan Fournier is not signing on with an NBA team and will be joining EuroLeague team Olympiacos on a 2-year, $4 million deal. Quite a lot of speculation over the last month or two about Fournier would end up, especially after coming off of his French campaign at the Olympics. But heading abroad, played predominantly for the Pistons last season, where he averaged 7 points, should I say, which is just kind of crazy to think that only a couple of years ago, he averaged 19 points for the Magic, had a season where he shot 41 from three, whereas last season he was down to 25%. He will certainly be hoping at only 31 years of age, maybe going abroad will just ignite his career for another big NBA push in a couple of seasons. Feels as if where he's at the moment, he's kind of role within the NBA over the last few seasons has certainly diminished greatly. But sometimes we see players like Dante Exum go abroad and just kind of reassert themselves as a good player. They come back with a fresh perspective on things in the NBA. Whether Fournier wants to do that or not at 31 years of age is another question. But I'm sure with a good season or two in the EuroLeague under his belt, there'd be plenty of teams vying for his signature there. Perfect, guys. There wraps up odds and ends for another week. Let's push on. That is outrageous that apparently the soundboard's not working. Let's try that again.
The Daily Dribble.
And it's either one thing or another, isn't it? I reckon that's just about blown the ears out of many of you guys who are listening to that with headphones in. Well, you win some, you lose some. Coincidentally, the name of this next segment. So, as I said, for every good thing a team has done this offseason, something that's more often than not also gone wrong. Today, I wanted to shine a bit of a light on some of those teams that have encountered both highs and lows this offseason. As always, I would love to hear from you guys what I got right, what I got wrong. I'm sure you guys will have different takes on certain teams, but I would love to hear them. Okay, let's start firstly with the Denver Nuggets. My big win for them was bringing in Dario Saric and Russell Westbrook. Now, big win for the Nuggets. They needed a competent backup big, which Saric is, and a floor general for that second unit, which is really kind of lacking experience and I guess just that kind of dog mentality. As I said, getting Saric, it really takes the pressure off Gordon to play that backup five, I believe, which he did pretty admirably, to be fair, but he doesn't play best there. So I think Saric is a great acquisition. Maybe a bit of a slight overpay for him, But for me, I spoke about this a few weeks ago. It's great to see the Nuggets actually spend some money. As for Westbrook, again, another player I spoke about last week, I think he's a fantastic pickup. Putting him in a second unit alongside Saric and Christian Brown is going to ensure that they don't suffer too much when the stars are taking a breather or injuries strike. Now, the problem that we saw with the Nuggets last season was that when Jokic went off, when Murray went off, when Gordon went off, they just didn't have the depth to be able to continue to keep things on court ticking over. And yeah, there's only so much for as great as Jokic and Ko are. There's only so much they can do. When they're off the court, they just got absolutely torched. So by boosting that second unit, hopefully that has them fare a lot better going into next season. On the losing side, a point that I've made note of, again, probably a month or so ago as it went down, was losing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope to the Magic. Now, for me, this was a huge bottle job and one that could have been easily avoided. Denver could have absolutely kept KCP. They could have continued expanding on roles for Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, Julian Strawther, those kind of young guys that they've got at the moment. Instead, they've let a key piece of their championship-winning core depart to the Magic for nothing. It really was, as I said, a bottle job, and it's offset maybe a little bit by the moves that I mentioned above, Saric and Westbrook. But losing KCP, really, really poor work from the Nuggets there, and it's I believe it's going to hurt them on both ends of the floor next season. So big loss there for the Nuggets. The second team I had was the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, on the winning side, I've said getting Gary Trent Jr. on a minimum contract was a huge win. Since the start of the 2020-2021 season, he's averaged 38% from three whilst taking 7 attempts per game and averaging 2 steals per game in that time as well. There's only 2 other players in the league that have managed those statistics in that period of time, and they're Paul George and Lonzo Ball, who is on a very small sample size, mind you. Now, Trent does gamble a little bit too much on defense at times, which hurts him, and he does have a bit of a tendency to suffer from tunnel vision. When he's attacking the rim, he's very get to the bucket focused, which is fine, but there's got to be more dimensions to your game. He just kind of lacks that ability to kick it out, find that player in the corner. That being said, though, getting a guy who can play on both ends of the court and average 14 points a game on a minimum contract is an absolute bargain. Fantastic piece of business there for the Bucks. Very well played. I think he will flourish there in Milwaukee. And wouldn't be surprised to see him as a potential candidate for most improved or 6th man of the year even. Watch this space on that one. On the losing side for the Bucks, I had losing Malik Beasley. Now, this one doesn't hurt quite as much given that Trent kind of replaces a lot of what Beasley does. That being said, Beasley has shot it at 41.3% from three on 7 attempts per game last season. No team, it doesn't matter who you are, what you replace it with, no team likes losing that level of shooting. They're hoping that AJ Green can continue his growth. Again, that'll hopefully make up for a little bit of that loss there in Beasley. But yeah, keeping Beasley was never really that feasible unless he wanted to take a big, big pay cut. Granted, it's not a huge loss, but it is a loss nevertheless, I believe, for the Bucks. Depending on how Trent goes this season, it might look poorer or it might not look like that much of a loss. But yeah, for me, I had losing Malik Beasley as a loss there. For the New Orleans Pelicans, a big win was getting Dejounte Murray. Incredible piece of business, turning Dyson Daniels and Larry Nance into Murray. That is very well done from the front office there. Last season, Murray averaged 22.5 points, 5.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists, a steal and a half per game, as well as going 36.5% from three. From what I've seen and just as from Murray as a player, I don't think he's a perfect fit with Zion, but he does give them avenues to score if Zion should get injured or Brandon Ingram potentially departs. Whether either one of those play out or not is another question, but I think just having Murray just raises their ceiling overall. His shooting has certainly improved, and his passing, I think, is good enough to run a two-man game there with Zion. I really think an underrated part of his game is his defense, though. And as I mentioned, it's still and a half a game. He's got quite good length. I think in a squad that boasts Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, Jose Alvarado, Brandon Ingram, and to be fair, last year's version of Zion, that makes for a pretty elite defensive squad there. I think they've got all the makings of a team that could be top 10 on both ends of the floor. And often teams that are both top 10 in defense and offense, that goes a long way to winning the title. And I think for the Pelicans, that's what they should be aspiring to. As a loss for the Pelicans, I've got their big man stocks. Now, losing both Jonas Valanciunas and Larry Nance, that really depletes your size. Daniel Tice and rookie Yves Missy as your center rotation with Jerome Robinson Earl as your third. That's not really befitting of a team that is pushing to win a title. Now, there's certainly a world in which you could look to play Zion as the five at times. Ideally, not the route you want to go, though, and he doesn't play his best ball there. Who knows, depending how the season goes, if the talk continues, they could look to part with Ingram throughout the year. And if they do, they would be very, very wise in looking to bolster those center stocks. Because at the moment, their squad, I think, as I said, on both ends of the floor looks really, really damaging. But that is the part, their center rotation is the part that's going to let them down, I believe. Finally, the Orlando Magic. As a winner, I've got them signing Kentavious Caldwell-Pope there from the Nuggets. A backcourt of KCP and Jalen Suggs. I am so excited to watch. Both dog-type players who are going to make it very, very difficult to score on any given night. And given that they already had the league's second-best defense last season, ridiculous to think that they're going to be even better on that end of the court now. Now, he struggled a little bit with his shooting last year, but over the last 4 seasons, it's down to 40.5% of his threes on 4.5 attempts per game. I personally think one of the best signings this offseason, one of the more lesser talked about signings this offseason, but certainly one of the biggest ones, I believe, both from the Nuggets losing him, as well as the Magic acquiring him. They were a real revelation last season, and as Banchero grows, as Suggs grows, bringing a guy with the experience and pedigree on both ends of the court of KCP just elevates them as well. So really good piece of business there for the Magic. On the losing side for the Magic, I've got paying Franz Wagner a bag. Now, Wagner out of the gate, 5 years, $224 million with the potential for it to reach 269 if he makes an All-NBA team. Seems excessive. Inside the arc, his game is pretty mixed and quite spasmodic. Probably doesn't receive enough credit for his defense, I don't think. I think he's quite tidy on that end of the court. Yet his three-point efficiency has declined year over year, and his jumper in general is somewhat wishy-washy. Again, has tendencies to be either really, really hot or really, really cold. Now, last season, he averaged 19.7 points, 5 rebounds, 3.5 assists, and a steal per game. Yet he shot the three ball at 28%, down from 36% the year prior. If you're getting paid $224 million with the potential for it to go to 269, hey, you got a lot of work to do to justify that money. And, you know, it was for the Magic, without going into all types of cap hold details and things of the kind, there were ways in which the Magic could have avoided this, saved money, and maintained flexibility. The fact is they didn't. For a guy who's been pretty hit and miss so far, that makes you a loser in my eyes. Now, there's certainly a world in which he does justify it. He has shown as I said, potential of being a great player, but just needs to iron out that consistency. So at this point in time, they are a loser in my eyes for that piece of business. Guys, there you have it. There goes through 4 teams there who are both winners and losers this offseason. As I said, rarely is there a case where teams just flat out win or flat out lose in an offseason. So for every piece of good business, there's normally a bit of bad business behind it. Just wanted to shine a light on some of those pieces. Looking ahead to next week, though, I'm going to turn my kind of focus into the future. And I'm going to go 3 teams that I believe are best poised over the next 5 to 10 years to be really, really dominant, just with how their young cores are set up. Really, really excited to get into that one. I hope you guys look forward to it too. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to the show, whether you're listening to this one on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or watching on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe so as to never miss another episode, as well as following all the socials, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok. As both the NBA and the NBL season rapidly approach, the news will be continuing to build. So never miss another piece of action. Be sure to follow all them. Guys, till next week, I'm going to leave it there. I feel like I've really been struggling today with hay fever. Here in Tassie, it's coming to that time of year. Spring has officially started now that we're into September. And I can already feel it. Like, I'm clawing my eyes out. I've got the kind of the snuffly nose, the sore throat, I feel like I've just been sniffing pollen all day. So it's probably a good opportunity for me to jump off there, end this episode, and hopefully go get some antihistamines in. Till next week though, guys, remember to be good or be good at it. See you later.